Welcome back to the Corporate Culture Protest, where we don't just survive toxic workplaces, we expose them. We are here to disrupt the corporate status quo and make space for conversations that actually lead to change. I'm Arika, and I'm joined by my brilliant co hosts.
Morning or afternoon, I should say. Afternoon, Erica. Afternoon, Dr. Cheapo.
Afternoon, Jenna. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good, good.
Awesome. Guys, today we're addressing something that too many people endure in silence: panic attacks at work. We want to find out, what do they really look like, why they happen, and how workplaces often respond in all the wrong ways. So let's talk about what a panic attack actually looks like, and why do so many of them go unnoticed. Jenna?
So, thank you, Erica. This is a very important topic and very excited to speak about this because it is much needed and people don't often see the factors that lead up to them. So, a panic attack is a kind of sudden, intense fear or discomfort that a person experiences, usually lasting several minutes, maybe up to 10 minutes or so maximum. And the symptoms are rapid heartbeat, sweating, trembling, shaking, shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea, abdominal distress, dizziness, chills, hot flushes, even numbness, fear of choking, fear of dying, even fear of losing control. And then the two D's: derealization, where you feel you kind of detached from reality, and depersonalization, where you feel you detached from yourself. So these are the kind of symptoms that happen. And they don't just happen out of nowhere. So they are, like I said, can come out of nowhere, and it's when I say doesn't come out of nowhere, what I mean is there are factors where that build up that can ultimately lead to a panic attack, and then it just suddenly hits you. So yeah, that is a basic outline of what a panic attack is.
That sounds like a lot.
Yes.
I mean, you could experience like any one of those symptoms or all of those symptoms. It sounds like a crazy
Yeah.
amount of something for someone to go through.
Yeah, you may not go through all of the symptoms, but there are a couple here that are especially common, especially shortness of breath. Shortness of breath and the sweating and the trembling are very common. And then the rapid heartbeat, because and the reason for that is often you feel you're in this highly pressurized environment. And so what the panic attack is that it's a physiological response to perceived threat. It's not weakness. Okay, so that's a key sentence to say about this. A physiological response to perceived threat. It's not a sign of weakness. That's a key thing to state.
Okay, Dr. Chappell.
Hmm. Well, there's a lot there. And I think for me, I think it like Jenna just mentioned that it's a build up from a series of events. And I think in most cases you find that for individuals that work in environments where there's that constant tension that arises in your everyday, I'm sure and I'm very much convinced that it's something that can even become a recurring thing, even maybe at times, even on a daily basis with other people and certain individuals. And what then becomes difficult to address or deal with such issues, I think it's the whole idea or how we've been socialized to look at and understand mental health issues and related and associated cases, to a point where if then you're working in a very highly pressurized environment, there's a lot of pressure that comes with thinking and assuming that if you talk about these things and whatever it is, that then becomes the build up to you having panic attacks. You end up sensing or feeling or thinking that you're becoming a liability in the workplace. I think
Mm.
how our institutions as well, how they operate, gets us to be in a place where, because everything is high paced, there's that sense, or there's that feeling of individuals. Then if then we don't have proper platforms to deal with these kind of moments, where you actually then begin to hide away whatever is going on, because now there's that fear of not wanting to be labeled as a liability in the workplace. You don't want to show what can be perceived as a weakness, which is not in actual fact. But the fact that we end up being exposed in such environments, it becomes difficult for individuals to open up and talk about these things. Then everything ends up resulting in moments where everything gets derailed and stuff just happens that is, we presume, to be out of the ordinary. But in some cases, it's something that builds up over weeks, over months, that then escalates to a point where the moment it happens, you can't put the ducks in a row. Everything is just, things fall apart literally.
It's actually quite a scary feeling. Let's talk about organizations and, when support is just part of their policy. Why do so many companies say that they care, but people are still burning out in silence? Jenna.
Well, first, the first thing to say, and I'm going to look at the bigger picture in terms of social and cultural norms and learned coping styles from childhood. So when you combine coping styles from childhood, so boys don't cry, be strong, others have it worse, what can happen from there is that these messages teach us to suppress our emotions. Okay, so they unfortunately they teach us to dissociate, which means that the trauma you feel doesn't disappear. They just may manifest physically or impact the body in another way. Right. So now this is how you're taught to deal with stuff. So then when you get into the workplace, if you couple that teaching of suppressing emotion with high workplace expectations, so productivity and endurance over emotional honesty, career progression and performance, and this thing of keeping your emotions separate from work, or keep, that kind of thing, then what can happen ultimately is that you have then a risk of burnout, because you have that upbringing of suppression, and then it goes into the workplace. And so then showing emotion is therefore seen as a sign of weakness or a lack of professionalism, I should say. And then stress gets normalized, or not stress, but or it's just kind of seen as a badge of honor. So it's not only is it the environment of the workplace in terms of capitalism and productivity over all costs, but it's also driven in terms of from a macro level of how we taught to see emotion as to not show it or seen as you weak, as opposed to something I need to talk about or something I need to work on. And so when you have that build up over time, then it just translates into the workplace. And then you have a situation where hiding is actually becomes self-protection, especially when you have an unsupportive environment. And that then becomes fight or flight. So now you keep it in. And then when that becomes a daily thing, that fight or flight, then you have the risk of the panic attack. So you see what I'm saying earlier, how that panic attack, in terms of when people ultimately get them, doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from the development of all of those things that have happened, even from upbringing,
Yes.
and then into the workplace. And then this thing of don't upset the apple cart, and then it can ultimately lead to a panic attack. So panic attack is not an isolated situation. That's the key thing to remember about this. Yeah.
It is a build-up. And you often hear people saying things like, leave emotion out of it, especially when you're in the workplace. Like, you can't get emotional. Don't be emotional about it. Just take the emotion out of it. I always struggle with that because I just feel like human beings are emotional. So I don't know, that separation might be more difficult for some people than it is for others. Is that what can cause that amount of stress?
I mean, Ariham, imagine saying to an employee who may have had a history of trauma, or they've recently had an armed robbery or a mugging or something, or they've experienced discrimination, And now that exact thing happens in the workplace where they're getting bullied in the workplace. How can they separate that? Or even if they've had a trauma that hasn't related to the workplace, such as, like I say, a smash and grab or something, and now they're affected, that can affect their concentration when they're at work, or they're anxious, or you become hypervigilant, or you're looking around you all the time because you think, well, who do I trust? Because when a person experiences a trauma, two assumptions about the world are shattered, that the world is a safe place and that people can be trusted, right? So if you couple a trauma you've experienced outside of work with an unsupportive environment, it means there's no period of recovery. Because a crucial thing when we have a trauma is to create a safe space. And so when you have this fight or flight response all the time, then what you have, Erica, is the breeding ground for a panic attack or numerous panic attacks, plural.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Dr.
Yeah.
Chippo.
No, it's true. And I think what becomes then very, very challenging about mental health issues in the workplace is, I think I mentioned this another time in another session we did the other time, that the problem with mental health issues is that it's not something like a broken toe or a broken ankle that we can see, that's visible to the eye. There's no way we can move around with our heads open so that everybody can see our brains. And I don't know if that makes sense. But the fact that it's something that happens within our heads, it's not something that you can see. It's not something that is evident to the human eye, if I can put it that way. So the problem then becomes that if, like Jenna said, we don't have supportive environments, you have cases where your PTSD kicks in, and then something happens in the workplace that exacerbates then moments where those panic attacks can just happen. Our socialization as well, like Jenna mentioned, does a lot to us, because the whole boys don't cry, you don't, we suppress emotions, is all connected to the whole idea around the discursive power that is produced within our communities, our homes as we are growing up. So you find that then seeps into the work environment, because if now you've been brought up to believe that you need to not express emotions in the workplace, you suppress things, there's a point where everything is going to get to a boiling point. And when that happens, you won't be able to control, or the effects of that happening in the workplace are going to be very much damaging. Also, as well, look at it from even also a cultural perspective, like Jenna was saying, there's a lot of stigma that is attached to cases or issues around mental health, right? So the fact
Yeah.
that there's a lot that is misunderstood about mental health problems amongst our people, I can speak for Black folks, if I can use myself as an example, in my people. We grow up being told or socialized to believe that if you have any mental health issues, it has to do with being bewitched, or it's something that is attached to cultural witchcraft and then you have your moments where depression kicks in the workplace, chances are that might not be given attention to, because there's also that fear of being ostracized, because now when you come to the open and say you're suffering from depression, or you suspect that something along the spectrum of depression is happening to you, there's that fear of being stigmatized, because already you can be ostracized by the mere mention of that, because also we lack proper understanding, we lack proper information on understanding the issues that affect us on a mental basis, to a point where then everything becomes layered. So when I come into the workspace with my theories around it being a case of witchcraft, and I might then not end up addressing the root cause of what's happening, because now I'm running and deflecting towards something that then I assume is the reason why I'm in the kind of state that I am in. So everything becomes very layered and becomes problematic. So institutions then don't get enough support for us in those spaces, then it becomes, yeah, a whole circus, eh?
No, that's
And
true.
and and my concern to add to that is management aren't what we call trauma informed. Trauma informed means understanding the root that where someone's behavior comes from, that the roots of it are trauma. In other words, instead of saying what's wrong with you, rather to say what happened to you, you know? And so
Mhm.
what often
Mm,
happens is we don't see, okay, this person has had several traumas, they've had several smash and grabs on the way to work or whatever it is.
mm,
And then the manager will just see, oh, this person is not performing. And then they'll just say, what's wrong with you? You need to get it together. Instead of saying, okay, let me just reflect what's going on here. Um, how's this come to be where this person was performing well and suddenly this has happened? And that's what we mean about being trauma informed, and basically being aware. And this is my concern, as you were saying, Dr. Chipo, is the lack of EQ and the lack of awareness about what someone is going
mm,
through. That you can't separate, or it's just separate work from the work, home from the workplace.
Yeah, of course. You could be going through a lot, and
Mm.
sometimes management doesn't notice, or sometimes people don't feel safe enough to share that they're going
Mm.
through something because I feel like people are holding on to their jobs. And,
Yes, correct.
you know, if I say I'm struggling with something, then management is going to look at me and think, okay, we need to replace this person, or they victimize you further, or something happens where you know that you can't put your hand up and say, please, I just need a little time. I've been through this, and I just need some counseling or whatever. I don't see people coming out and saying that because they're so afraid to lose their jobs. So that comes
Correct.
down
Correct.
to management that doesn't have the EQ to deal with that. And then you
Yeah.
tend to lose good employees because, I mean, that good employee is just going through something, it's temporary. They're going to be back,
Mm.
but it's going to be difficult for them to get back to where they were if they're not given the correct support.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they're working, looking over their shoulders all the time, thinking, what will it be today? So then you're not going to get the best out of that employee. You're going to get an employee who plays it safe or
Mhm.
just does what they're required to do. But as far as innovation is concerned, that is impacted, or they may be resistant to that. Or also, if I come up with ideas, if you have this work environment where it feels like a turf war, then you may be seen as a threat. So then you just hide for the sake of self-protection, and then you just come to work and go home, you know?
Yeah. I
mm.
guess it'll take a toll on you eventually. You might think it's
Yeah,
fine, but eventually it would wear away at you.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, so let's talk about how we can make workplaces panic safe. What would it take to make a workplace truly safe for someone experiencing a panic attack or any sort of stress or extreme stress, I should say?
Well, the first thing I'd say is to manage workload. This business of emails at 10 o'clock at night and things like that is not on. In fact, there are countries now who have laws against this, where you can't email after hours. So to manage workload is very important, and expectations. Then to encourage open conversations, um, spaces where it's safe to talk, and even quiet spaces where you have your routines where you just go quiet. And if you have a room where there's bean bags and it's nice and relaxing, just to have spaces where you can just, relax and be quiet for a while. Um, so healthy routines, and then obviously psychoeducation. So regular psychoeducation on these issues,
Mm,
whether it's panic attacks, whether it's um, you know, trauma, all these things, very, very important. And then for the organization to continually promote their employee wellness provider, but not just to promote it, to promote why it's important, and to continually reinforce that they won't be stigmatized for using it, and to continually reinforce the company policy. Because a lot of people don't use it in fear of what people might think. Okay. And then
mm,
and then lastly, for employees to foster autonomy and control. Because at the heart of this, why people have panic attacks, Erica, is
Mhm.
because people feel powerless. They come to work every day thinking, what's it going to be today? I've got no voice. What will someone say to me? If I do this, what will happen? And so at the heart of it, the theme of that is I'm powerless. So with that lack of control and that high pressure and the lack of support, then you risk that panic attack. So really
Mm,
fostering control in terms of encouraging people to come up with ideas, um, make decisions, that kind of thing, where you create that environment of fostering autonomy and self-determination. So those are some
mm,
ideas.
mm,
Yeah, and I think, it's very important about what you said about the stigma attached to getting help or seeking out help. I feel it's
Yeah.
a lot more difficult in the workplace, especially if they do offer those programs. I've
Mm,
actually heard it a lot before where you can say to someone, listen, there is a wellness program, you can get some counseling,
mm.
but the
mm,
person that needs the counseling is too afraid because they think all of that information is going back to their employer.
mm.
And so
Yeah.
it's that fear again that they're just not going to trust the wellness provider now because they think that because it's coming from the employer, it might not be the best thing for them.
So you have to then ask, Erica,
Mm,
why is there this empathy deficit? A
mm.
person could have been mugged, robbed, experienced discrimination, GBV. Now they're affected and now they're afraid to use the employee wellness provider despite experiencing all of that. Why is there that? And then now you suppress all that, and again you have the breeding ground for a panic attack. So why is there
It
that
is.
empathy deficit? Dr. Chipa, your thoughts?
No, no, you're right. And I think there's need for institutions, corporations to maybe come back to earth and be with all of us and understand and continue to encourage an environment that promotes us understanding that at the end of the day, as employees, we are humans, not robots. We go through everything on a daily basis. And to be honest, all of us have our fair share of things happening on a daily basis. Just
Mm,
because we're working doesn't mean we don't have things happening in our social world that doesn't seep into the workplace. Because I think
mm,
when we become very conscious and aware of the fact that the workplace is an extension of the home, there's no way you get to the office or you get to your workplace and then suddenly you have to act and be in character and forget that everything else exists, because
mm,
everything at the end of the day is intertwined. It's all
mm,
connected. So I think if we do have companies that continue to invest in understanding and promoting and reminding us on a daily basis that we are humans and not robots. I know the rigorous, crazy schedules that we have. I know test week. I know marking exams, all of that, and all of that pressure. You get to a point where you're literally a walking zombie. You're literally walking in and out. You've lost sense of time and all of that. And it gets so much. So I think, like you mentioned as well, the workloads as well, they need to be realistic, because at the end of the day, we also have lives outside of the workplace. You can't be sitting on my bumper at 10 p.m. in the evening saying you need the results sheet, and it becomes too much. So I think the more even institutions try to reinforce the idea of understanding and reminding themselves as well as management that we are humans at the end of the day, we are not robots, then we get to a
Well, here's
place
what.
where
Mm.
we accept and acknowledge that we go through stuff and it's okay to go through things. And it takes a lot of bravery to even stand up to say, listen, this is what's going on with me. Because in most cases, we do the fake it till you make it until we crash. That is not sustainable at the end of the
No, no,
day.
no. And
Mm,
yeah, here's a question to managers out there. How often will you spontaneously just check in with your staff? It could
thank
be
you.
it could be bi-weekly, it could be once a month, whatever it is. Just
Thank
check in.
you.
How are you guys coping? So not just a meeting on work-related stuff, but just a check-in. How often
Thank you.
does that happen? It doesn't always need to be, well, we will refer it to the employee wellness, we'll let them do it. Just a simple
Mm,
check-in. I wonder how many managers actually do that, or how common that is, I reckon.
And then how
wonderful.
common is it I mean, even if your manager does do that, how common is it for someone to feel safe enough to say, you know what, actually, I'm having a rough time. So
Yeah.
it comes back to that, that feeling safe in a workplace. And a lot of the time, it's like you're saying, we all have things that we are dealing with in our personal lives. Everything
Yeah,
is there. It doesn't just go away because we walk through the doors of the company to work. But
yeah.
the thing is, like, once someone, like, let's say you are dealing with an office bully, for instance, and then you
Mm.
walk in, and because you have all of this other stress that you're dealing with, then it becomes difficult to cope with that.
Yeah.
You see, I
It
think
means,
that's where it is.
Erica,
Mm.
it means, Erica, that there's no period of recovery because with continuous
Mm-mm.
stress all the time, and no period of recovery, energy resources can become depleted, and that is when
The
the symptoms
places.
can kick in. And that is when the
Yeah,
panic attack can kick in. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of
And if
sense.
we and if we are the family that everybody sells us, the dream of we are family, surely we should be checking in on each other and finding out where everybody else is in the family and getting people to come in to give awareness talks, invite people from even South African depression and anxiety groups,
Mm.
and so that people can just be knowledgeable and have an awareness. Because sometimes we go through things that we can't even name, we can't name as, but when we get the expert voices in, then we'll be able to relate. We can resonate and say, okay, this is what this is. So therefore, I need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if there's then silence and there's a deafening silence around, even just checking in, like you're saying, Jenna, then how are we a family of people who are supposed to function and be productive to the best that we can?
And even Dr. Chipa, those talks, even my concern with those is they're good, but my concern is then they're one-offs. So now you've helped the staff. Now there's going to be follow through because when you do these talks,
Yes.
you hear themes from what the employees say. So then once you hear these themes, you then write a report with themes to the workplace, to the manager, whatever it is. What happens thereafter? And often not from experience from doing employee wealth, there's often not follow-up, or you don't see those
Mm,
same employees again. And so then they become cynical because then they think the training is just window dressing, or where
mm,
it's taking us,
mm,
or the company just trying to look good and they can say, look, yeah, we're helping our staff, but is it window dressing? And so then they get cynical about that. So it really takes a persistent, consistent effort, not one-offs or window dressing. It is a consistent effort.
mm.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Guys, it's time to wrap up. We deserve workplaces where care is real and not conditional. Jenna and Dr. Chipo, thank you so much for bringing the truth and the tools today. Next week, we're
Thank you.
talking about one of the hardest and most
Oh,
powerful decisions you can make, choosing to walk away. Until next time, together we expose, we resist, and we rise. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
I
A young man in deep waters he swims till he becomes a man. It's a journey that's the greatest for him, and that's how he lives. When he drew his first in the airs of earth and so battle streets. Thinking back, what created me and how far I've come. Rain it rains for days, and the story lives in their whisper tales. Clouds forming together, feel the change in the weather, and your world is born. Then the spirit ascends, and he carries the weight, and be never the same. It's been long awaited, now it's time to get it, and the force can end it. Snap juicy begins, and I'm at it again.